Okay, this is the first Friday in the month of August. Welcome everyone to the show. This is your Business Morning. I am Bosun Amafai. Let's get the show started. Is the trade war reloaded by the U.S. President Donald Trump, and this is how the global media captured what happened yesterday evening Nigerian time. So let's try to get this for you, then a bit of a sense of what actually happened with those announcements. President Donald Trump vowed to impose a 10% tariff on $300 billion of Chinese imports from September 1, sharply raising the stakes in a bruising trade war with China and jolting global financial markets. That's how Reuters news agency captured that this morning. Then overnight, this is how CNBC captured it. Everyone's swarming over the story. Trump's latest broadside on China raises fear that a trade war is the new status quo. That's how it was captured. How is it captured elsewhere? Quote, the latest round of tariffs, if implemented, will contribute to globalization or a continuation of lackluster growth and could hasten a U.S. recession in as soon as 3 quarters. That's according to strategists from Morgan Stanley. Meantime, according to Bloomberg, it says that the threat to tax practically all U.S. imports from China marks the biggest escalation so far taken by the Trump administration and brings a surprise end to a truce that had only been in place since the president met Xi Jinping in Osaka at the end of June. So how is China expected to react? Look at how one of the news headlines this morning says China will likely ramp up stimulus to shield its economy as the U.S. threatens additional tariffs. That's according to Timothy Moy, the co-head for Asia Macro Research and Chief Asia Pacific Equity Strategist at Goldman Sachs. What's the view within the African continent? According to Carlos Lopez, who is a former executive secretary of the UN Economic Commission for Africa, he tweeted this morning, quote, if the U.S. expands its trade war with China, it is clear Africa will suffer less demand for commodities, higher volatility, and currency fluctuations do not augur well. That's according to Carlos Lopez. And of course, if you look at the trade war, there's now another trade war within the existing trade war. And that's according to a CNBC anchor early this morning. Japan's cabinet today, Friday, approved plan to remove South Korea from a list of what they call a white list of countries that enjoy minimum export controls, and that will take effect August the 28th. Japan's industry minister says the trade control, which has now been in place with South Korea, is not a countermeasure, but done from the standpoint of Japan's national security. Let's get a sense of what all this means for the marketplace as we see a brand new month coming into place, but the war rhetorics and actions are being taken across the world. Let's get a bit of an insight into some of this from Uchenna Minis. He's the chief market strategist at Eagle Global Markets. He's live to us from our studios in downtown Lagos at the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Good morning, Uchenna. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Bosun. Thank you for having me.
Well, we were having a bit of a telephone conversation just before midnight yesterday. Then suddenly the new President Trump's 10% firing shot at Beijing occurred just a few hours after my conversation, our conversation on telephone. This is as hard as it can get, as everyone is waking up and grappling with this latest development. What's your take, Uchenna?
So it's quite clear what China is doing. And if you look at it from the perspective of China, it's a win-win situation. All they are looking to do is stall out these trade talks to see what happens after the 2020 election to decide who exactly comes into power. If Trump comes into power, they will still continue to negotiate. If Trump doesn't come into power, they will still negotiate with whoever comes through, and they believe if the Democrat wins the seats, that's just going to be very perfect for the Chinese. So if you look at it from their perspective, it's a win-win situation for them to sort that out. And Trump has seen that as something that is quite offensive, and that's why he's going all out. Because right now, it's more of his ego against what he wants for stock prices, and that's why he announced that he would be looking to implement a 10% tariff on the 300 billion imported Chinese goods.
Okay, so everyone thought that the talks will be positive, and folks were beginning to think, well, perhaps we're getting into a new cycle of things, but this is President Trump waking up and says, look, I don't think these folks the Chinese folks are a little bit getting together is done. I'm moving in with another 10%.
Yeah, so it's very clear what has been actually driving price of market for the beginning of the year. It's just that trade rhetoric saying that things have been going all well, things have been progressive, but that's not been the case from the Chinese camp. They've actually put out to Washington and the U.S. highlighting that they need to exactly respect the Chinese administration before they can really have talks. And what they mean by respect is take out all the outstanding tariffs right now and also leave the ban on Huawei so that Huawei can continue doing its business with U.S. companies. But that has not been the case. So Trump is literally looking to eat his cake and have it, asking the Chinese to buy more soybeans from U.S. farmers. However, not really relaxing or relenting on any of his plans to continue to escalate trade war situation at the moment. So that is really what the situation is. And for me, I don't think there will be any headway until we get to that 2020 election. And that is just going to continue to drive market risk across the asset classes. We saw the Dow Jones yesterday drop for about 600 points. Oil, for example, has dropped about 7% on the basis of those escalation, and that is just going to continue to weigh in on emerging markets and asset price valuation from emerging market space, really.
Yes, so the 10% tariff hike firing at Beijing by President Trump came just about 24 hours after the FOMC, Jerome Powell's team, decided to cut rates as expected, but says, sorry, folks, I didn't tell you, I didn't say that this is going to be the beginning of a rate-cutting cycle. How much pressure do you think the latest President Trump's move, if you add the Japanese and the South Korea's internal trade war in the South Pacific, added to it the pressures that central banks are now coming under?
It's the plethora of all these events you've just rightly mentioned is going to continue to increase market risk, and that's why we've reached out to our clients, highlighting to them that for whatever it is you're doing right now, you should look to readjust your portfolio to be quite defensive, because nothing is looking rosy. Now, the Federal Reserve has come out to cut 25 basis points, but I've also highlighted that cutting this 25 basis points is just a mid-cycle monetary policy adjustment, should I say, movement. They've not really said that this is what they will be doing. The expectation from the market is that this is going to be a rate-cutting cycle. But Jerome Powell has come out to say, well, we are not especially feeling that downside pressure in the U.S. However, we understand that global risk and global growth is slowing down. We just can't continue cutting when we don't have those risks coming to us. So if you have the Fed backtracking and you have Donald Trump continuing to hike tariff with Chinese goods, and you have the South Korea and Japan war, this is just all coming together as a cascade of increasing risk of sentiment. And that's why we tell people right now we should try to be defensive until we get a clearer picture as to what would happen with market risk as regards to risk appetite, really.
Yes, so in terms of what we should do also as a central bank in Nigeria, for example, you think everyone should be on, keep one eye permanently open, perhaps two eyes fully opened, because things are happening almost on a daily, on an hourly basis. No one is sure of what is happening. Look at this, it's August. You're looking at the Japanese, South Korea's trade fight, what Japan, the cabinet just approved today. August 28th is when that will be coming through. Then you have the President Trump saying 1st of September, the 300 billion, 10% tariff will come in. Then you have an interest rate decision again meeting by November, right? So, September, then you have November. So how much pressure Do you think all of this will put
September,
on the market
yes,
moving
September.
down?
So now the plan, or some camp have been hinted that Trump is driving this whole narrative and rhetoric of escalation just so that he can force the hand of the Federal Reserve to continue to cut. And it should be noteworthy that you don't underestimate Trump. He could be right. He could get the Fed to do that, because that was exactly what happened in the December hike as the market sold off. The Fed looked to change its hiking stance to being on hold, and now we can see them cutting. So if we experience continuous downward pressure in this risky asset, there is that high indication that the Fed might look to push to Trump's demand by cutting by another extra 25 basis points. In short, Washington and Trump administration would want the Fed cut by 100 basis points up onto the 2020 election. But you should also understand that 2.25% is not enough ammunition to continue to fight recession when actual recessionary risk materialize. So the Fed is caught. I don't envy Jerome Powell right now, because he's really caught in the center between two worlds. Really, he needs to manage Trump, micromanage Trump, and also he needs to manage the economy. People would say he should be focusing on the economy, but the truth of the matter is, when you see a president that is so vocal and also has the willpower to continue to adjust things, it's very important that you really need to pay attention to him, because he can really just change the table and put everything on you, as he has been doing following his tweet.
I understand. I don't envy any central bank at the moment as I speak. This is not a good time to be a central banker, because the pressure is on of them across economies across the world. Thank you so much, Uche Naminis. Thank you so much for coming through and putting this latest the global developments into some perspectives for us. Have a great day and a great weekend ahead of you.